Alright, what's up y'all, it's LakerFan here. As I was about to tell today's video, we're here to rank all the defensive badges and tiers for the second time in NBA 2K24. So, the last time I did this was 100 days ago. It's literally in the beginning of Season 1 when I was giving my rough estimations after like a week or two of playing the game. So, we're here to give like a more authentic ranking to it and give it a more of an update. Now, some of these may remain. Like, I'll be a little bit of a spoiler here, you know? Things like immovable and glove, we know it's still good. So, that's a little bit of an obvious. But I wanted to do this for those who are looking to me for advice on, you know, what the best badges are, you know, what they need to go for in the builder and stuff. I know it's not quite as important as it used to be because we don't spend badge points on the badges anymore. They just come naturally if you ended up getting enough of an attribute to get these said badges. But considering it has been 100 days, I wanted to update you guys. Obviously, we used to do this every single season, but that's because it used to save you badge points. But anyway, it is still a little bit important to have some information like this, so we're going to update it, all 4 of them, just so we're clear. So we're going to do the defense today, we'll do the finishing, shooting, and playmaking after. So I hope y'all enjoy. If you do, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on noties, all good stuff. And like always, try 1 to 1,000 likes. So the first badge that we're going to have for today is going to be post lockdown. It was, you know, one of the 4 C tier badges I had in last season's, or last video's update, I should say. So with post lock, I'm gonna leave it in the C tier, but that's actually surprisingly gonna be pretty decent for this tier list. I have a lot of them going down in this video, whether they're in the B tier, the C tier, or even some of the A, and we'll talk about the S later, but you get the deal. We probably got the S tier staying in the S, so let's just be frank about that. But anyway, post-lockdown, it gets the job done for what you want it to do. And I do really justify for you guys out there, if you happen to have like an undersized build, interior defense is very cheap on those, like 6'6" and 6'7", stuff like that. They're actually really nice to upgrade the interior defense on. And with that, you do get the post-lockdown, you know, at like the 74 thresholds. I believe it's 74, 82, and 88 are the thresholds for the post-lockdown. So with all those levels to it, I think interior defense itself is nice to have, but we're here to just talk about the badge itself. So post-lockdown, again, it's good for getting the job done of what you want it to do. It'll stop post spins, it'll stop drop steps. That's mainly its, you know, whole functionality in a way. Now, that's a very rare playstyle. I'll be honest with you guys. The last time I've played a post score in this game, especially because I play a lot of 5v5, it's very long time ago. It's probably Captain Hook, like literally 3 months ago, almost probably around the time that I uploaded these videos, to be honest with you guys. So the last time I got hit with the post spin, or any of my teammates got hit with the post spin in 5v5 Pro-Am, was probably, like I said, about 3 months ago. So it's very rare that you do run into this, but when you run into the people that play on my team, like let's say like Tonic and Joey, it may be some situations that you do run into, you know, people who do operate out of the post a little bit. But for the most part, post scoring in 2K24 in recent years, in my opinion, has been a lot of outside post scoring, which has a lot less to do with getting broken on the moves and a whole lot more to do with obviously things to deal with like Dream Shake or the post hops, post spins, with the post fade phenom and the space creator, stuff like that. That's the type of post scoring and shot creating I kind of imagine out of bigs these days. So anyway, we have post lockdown in the C tier, staying there. Moving along to the ankle braces, we have this in the D tier. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I think ankle braces, if it were a badge point type game, right, like if we had to choose what badges we're gonna put on, nobody's running ankle braces at all. I mean, it's like a pretty, you know, pointless badge in the sense where the only time you really do get your ankles broke, quote unquote, or stunned with the tight handles is mainly just when people have sharp take on, honestly. And that's pretty unavoidable. Like, I've played with plenty of people that have 94 Prim D, let alone even played with my own build that has 94 Prim D, and honestly, I don't think Hoff ankle braces really does a whole lot. I really think it's pretty mid, and I don't know, that's why we have it in the D tier. I don't have much more to say about it than that, and it's not really super necessary, to be honest with you. I still see people get hit with the same ankle breakers and the same stuns on sharp take as they do with Hoff, as they do with nothing on it at all. Now, at the same time, I think that's a good thing for the sake of like RNG factor, right? Like random number generator, if you're not familiar with the term, where if ankle breakers and tight handles are like good in a video game and the counterpart to it of ankle braces isn't good, but now the reality we live in is that neither of these 2 things are really, or 3 for that matter, none of those badges are really that good. So they all kind of cancel each other out in this whole mid-off essentially. But if we were in a world where they actually are functionally good, I think the balance is very key when it comes to that. You want the counters to the badge to be just as good as the badges themselves, so that if you have an elite lockdown with that said badge, it actually can counter it properly. The worst thing we could ever experience for a 2K is that if ankle breakers were extremely overpowered, but where there was no counterpart badge to it, and it's all just people spamming, you know, the same old stuff they used to do in 2K17, the snatchback after snatchback after snatchback after behind the back cancel, and then you just have people spamming ankle breakers. I think it's a good world we live in that it's not good, but honestly it is fun for entertainment purposes if it is. So it's a little bit of a tough bridge to gap, but either way, I'm satisfied with where, you know, the ankle breaker status is for all of the stuff in this game. So let's move along. Next up, we have Pogo Stick. Pogo is actually going to be in the E tier. Now, this may be gassing it a little bit and hating on it a tad bit, but in my opinion, I don't think Pogo is functional in this game. I think, honestly, if you jump out to play, you're out to play. It's as simple as that. I don't think any level of Pogo Stick saves you from that. I think as soon as you go for a jump on a mash or anything like that, and that, for that matter, jumping and mash on mash D isn't even really impactful. When it comes to this game's mashing defense, it's not a lot to do with, you know, playing for close shots or anything like that. It's all about defending standing dunks, and standing dunk defense is all about your positioning. So Pogo Stick and jumping does nothing for you. It truly doesn't. I wish it did for the sake of like balance in the game, because obviously if people time their jumps properly on your standing dunk attempts, it probably could be a good counter to it, but it's not how the game works at all. Like jumping doesn't make any difference or not. So I will say it does on driving dunk attempts, but realistically, if you jump on someone's driving dunk attempt and then they pick up on it like how I used to do in the past, they can just kind of drive right at you. You'll jump and then you're out of the play, and then boom, they just go up the standing lay. It doesn't matter what level of Pogo Stick you have. The badge isn't really like as OD as it was in 2K20, and if it were, I would definitely be giving it a little bit more love. But again, with the way the game works and just its counteractive to, like its counterpart to being a defense mechanism to like standing dunks, it's pretty pointless. It just doesn't work. Now, if you're talking close shots, sure, it's good enough to do that, but I mean, you could defend close shots with like 25 interior D on a 6'10 in this game. That's a reason that we have a lot of the interior defensive badge type stuff kind of moving around a little bit in this video. So next up we have Workhorse. This is also going to be in the E tier. I would love to show some love to Workhorse. I would love for it to be a good badge. I think it's just, you know, I can't, bro. It's so bad. I've seen so many times, again, with 94 Prim D, right? It gives so many different badges, Workhorse included, and it just doesn't do anything. I don't see any difference between the people on my team with 94 Prim and Hoff Workhorse versus me with like bronze. I'm so dead serious. It just feels so pointless. And I don't know, like, and especially if you're comparing it between like if a point guard loses the ball and if a lockdown goes for that loose ball, right? Some of these PGs got no Workhorse, but they have like, you know, 86 speed for the gold speed booster, or maybe even more for Hoff and stuff like that, versus lockdowns that have around the same speed just for defensive functionality. It's what they build their builds for. But I don't know. They have the Hoff Workhorse, point guard has none, and the point guard gets the ball half the time in those loose ball scrums. It's just pointless in my opinion. I think it's a pretty awful badge. If it were, once again, a badge point thing or a badge tiered like it was 2K23, I still probably wouldn't run any badge points on it, and I don't think anybody would for that matter. It's just terrible. So the only reason people, you know, see any value in it is because they just get it by default. So that's how we feel about that. Also, if you guys didn't know, I'm pairing up with the NBA 2K Lab this year, so you can use code Laker for 20% off at checkout at their website. That's NBA2KLab.com. On this website is all types of really good statistical jump shot information. You can also test the jumpers on their website too. Plug the controller straight into your phone or to your PC. You can get early, green, late. It'll tell you where you need to adjust on that jump shot. Or if you don't know what jumper you want to run, you just go to their jump shot recommender. You punch in your height, the jump shot rating that you're working with, and then based on the milliseconds of timing that you get, it'll recommend you a jump shot. So again, if you want to use code Laker for 20% off at checkout, that's NBA2KLab.com. Appreciate you guys, and we'll get back to the video. All right, so moving along to Right Stick Ripper, we are going to be moving this all the way down to the D tier. Now, I was considering putting this in the C tier, but I just feel like when you compare it to other badges around it, it just doesn't really match up. And you know, like dating back to when I last made this video, it was actually while the right stick steel glitch was even still in the game. So remind you, I made this video 100 days ago. And long story short here, let me get my controller to explain to you guys how this sounded. So you would be able to flick on your controller up, 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 up as fast as possible, and you'd stay in the passing lane 100% of the time. And if someone threw it at your head, you're gonna steal the ball. It was a glitch. It was completely broken. I played against a ton of top players that were using that, whether it was 3v3 Pro-Am or 5v5 Pro-Am, and it was super toxic. I'm glad it got patched, and as soon as I made the video on it, it did get patched. I don't think it had anything to do with that, to be honest with you. But anyway, all things aside, Right Stick Ripper, it's like an okay, notable type of thing that some people use in this game, but it's extremely rare, just like how Pogo, you know, or not even Pogo Stick, how Post Lockdown is with its rarity of usage. Right Stick Ripper is kind of the same breath, but obviously like you have the choice of using it or not, whereas Post Lock is kind of like you only need to use it when the opponent actually has something to do with it, whereas right stick gripper, it's like people just choose not to use it. Now, for those out there that do specifically use it, I'm sure you're gonna have some, you know, opinion or backlash on the fact that I'm giving it a D tier, but I just don't find it to be all that useful. And from my own teammates experience, because to be honest with you guys, I've never played on a build with a super high steal rating in this game, because I just don't find value in going for, you know, on ball plucks or even passing lanes for that matter. But I guess that's just because I kind of try and get a lot of like utility out of my builds, and steel kind of just happens to be one thing that I cut the cost on a little bit. But anyway, right stick gripper, we're moving it down to the D tier. I don't find it to be a super useful badge, to be honest with you. So anyway, moving along, we have clamps. This is going to be staying in the B tier where I had it in the original video. We don't have to explain this too much. You know, clamps is like a decent badge. It's not super game breaking or anything like that, but it's nice to have, and it's very important for those, like, you know, kind of blow by animations that you want to like counter a little bit. Now, we still have immovable. I've said this like 3 times by this point, but yeah, clearly guys, we have immovable still in the S tier. You know what, let's just put it right there. Let's just get these S tiers out of the way. It's obvious that's where we're keeping them. All right, so anyway, immovable, way better than clamps, but clamps still obviously better than a lot of the C tier badges we're gonna have down here. So clamps, again, it's like to counteract the blow-by animations, stuff like that. It's obviously going to give you some body up bumps. It's nice to have, obviously, if you're 6'9" and below. It's one of the things that kind of sucks about being 6'10" is that you can't get clamps. You can't get a lot of other badges that have to do with it that are perimeter defensive oriented, but obviously, it's one of the values that you can have as a lockdown. So we're keeping it in the B tier, simple as that. Moving along, we have 94 feet. This is going to be a C tier badge, so I don't know. I just find it to be that this is not a very full court press-esque game. So like, honestly, what I used to see in the past is double press. Like, it was like they would keep their lockdown and their 2 guard on the point guard on the press, then they'd put their point guard potentially, or their power forward maybe, depending on how the team likes to run their press, on the shooting guard who's trying to help as like the second guy assisting on it. And they would force you to make a lot of mistakes. They would play what we call elbows, where they would play your left and your right, like for instance the leftmost guy being the lockdown, the rightmost guy being the shooting guard or something like that, and they would make it really hard on the point guard to break a press. And I thought that 94 feet was going to apply to that even more, but honestly I don't think 94 feet is a really, you know, necessary badge for that matter. I also, like I said earlier, don't think full court pressing is quite as much as it used to be. Like, I see a lot more single press, I will say that much. So while I am kind of counteracting how valuable I find this badge to be, I will say I do see a lot of people just rely on one guy to press the point guard nowadays rather than sending 2. So I do understand like that this can be somewhat useful, but I still think things like fast feet, clamps, and immovable and stuff like that are far superior to something like 94 feet, and the fact that it only works for one niche specific thing, which is literally only behind half court. Obviously this badge is completely pointless when it comes to when you get past half. So if you're in the half court on Pro-Am, or if you're playing, let's say 3v3 pressing, I mean, are we serious? Like, and then for 2v2 obviously it's non-functional as well, same with 1v1. So I don't know, like, I just find 94 feet to be something that's not quite as powerful as I thought it would end up being. So anyway, speaking of B tier badges, moving down to the C tier, we have off-ball pest going down as well. Now, this is not out of a lot of hate to off-ball pest. I just think I gassed it up a lot in Season 1. Off-ball pest is still a very good functionality to the game. I think it's nice to have. I think it can be a little bit of a game changer. I won't really call it exactly that though. It's not truly a game changer. It's just kind of an accessory badge that's nice to have. Once again, if we were talking badge points, I would not be running off-ball pest, but it just so happens that you get it off having the prim D pretty high, so it's nice to have. It's a nice little accessory badge that it comes in handy when you actually have it to activate, but I don't go out of my way to activate it. I'll put it like that. It just so happens that I bump into people sometimes. And, you know, I would like give it a little bit of like credibility, but the way that I found the spot finder and like the off-ball movement in this game to be so valuable, especially on like the give and goes, the way I've been doing it as well, I don't know. I mean, I do get irritated when off-ball pest gives me like a grab or something like that, pause, but it's still a really mid badge, honestly. And I don't see any world where off-ball pest can be an overpowered badge. Like, there's just not enough reasoning to go for off-ball moves like with dexes or, you know, spamming cuts or anything like that. And there's no way off-ball pest just hard counters cuts, you know? Like, cuts will happen if there's openings to it. You don't just grab people out of the blue and just, you know, completely pass interference them. I mean, obviously it's penalties. Like, they don't let you just commit penalties just because you have off-ball pest, you know? But from time to time, you will get in the way of a pass, and sometimes maybe you'll even bump a guy while he's being thrown the ball, and maybe you do pass interference him, right, on some football stuff, and the ball just goes flying by because the person that was supposed to catch the ball is no longer there. It's pretty rare. I would call that like a once in a half a month, like, you know, every 2 weeks animation that I see sometimes, maybe even like a whole month, honestly, but it's still a thing. So anyway, moving along. We also have Pick Dodger, which is going to be another C tier badge as well. So you can see kind of the trend here. We got a lot of badges moving down a little bit on the defensive end. This game was so defensive at the beginning of the game, and now I've seen it kind of curve in like the offensive end, where plucks aren't quite as ridiculous as they used to be. Shooting has got a lot easier. We have a lot of things that really make defense a little bit less, you know, important, and a lot of these badges are getting residual effects from that. So anyway, like I said, we have Pick Dodger in the C tier. I find this to be a badge that's like okay and decent to have. You could really maybe make the case that people would still run this badge even if it were the badge points of the past, but I think like more of dodging screens has to do with skill than it does your perimeter defense rating. And obviously, you know, what I mean by that is that when it comes with your perimeter defense, I'm talking about still getting Pick Dodger. I think it's still a little bit more of like a skill gap of screen avoiding, and naturally the people that have higher prim D, you know, while they do still have a higher level of Pick Dodger, and it may be a coincidence that they avoid screens better, to be honest with you, I still think the people who play lock rather than the people who don't are just more skilled at avoiding screens. And that's another thing too. So it's a little bit hard to judge this badge sometimes because you have to like spawn a person who plays point guard onto a lock and see how they play, as opposed to a true lockdown sometimes in terms of avoiding screens, because sometimes people are really good at just shooting the gaps between playing under, playing over, you know, calling for help from their back end. Maybe they're a more versatile build as well, so they don't get caught on screens quite as much because they can just switch to the big rather than having to fight through everything. So it's a little bit hard to judge this badge even to this day, but I think C tier is a decent place to put this. If you had to argue really hard for it, if you're like a prim lock fight through guy who's like a 6'5" lockdown who can't switch onto a big for his life, but he just sits there and fights through screens all day, you'd probably argue that Pick Dodger is important to you and it's a B tier or something like that. But I don't know, with the way Brick Wall plays in this game, I just think it's a little bit hard to avoid screens by just hoping for the RNG gods to like bail you out of just your build being good at, you know, going invisible to those screens or anything like that. I think it's a lot more skill, and that's a good thing in a way too. But anyway, moving along to the next badge, we have Fast Feet. Now this is going to be a B tier. I think I'm going to call it like a really low B tier, just so you guys know. I don't like consider it to be like I'm putting the good badges at the top of the list and the bad ones at the bottom when it comes to these like little subcategories, like for instance clamps being a top B tier versus Fast Feet being a bottom one just because of where they're at. So just keep that in mind. But I definitely consider Fast Feet to be a bottom of the B tier badge. So like above the C's, you know, it's better than 94 feet and off-ball pest and Pick Dodger and post lock and stuff like that. But it's not really better than anything else that we have in the B tier for this video, and it's definitely not belonging to be in the A. So for Fast Feet, this is something that is more like, it's not exactly what I thought it would be, right? I think it's more for bump animations. I don't think Fast Feet activates quite as much of like the sliding as I thought it would. This is more for cutoffs and bumps and getting into position to cut the player off when they're in, like going for that little gap shoot for an offensive player, I'm trying to say. So like if the offensive player is trying to drive and get past this small margin of window that they have to get by you, I think Fast Feet is really good for moving you into that spot, rather than I thought what it would be is just to up your defensive movement speed. But I don't think that's quite its utility. So just keep in mind what I believe it does now, but I don't even really know that for a fact, to be fair. I just know that it doesn't seem to affect the way that you move off, like off ball and on ball really that much as far as speed goes. But again, for the cutoffs, it seems to play a pretty big factor. So anyway, into the next badge, we have Interceptor. This is obviously going to be an A tier. It's pretty simple, as simply put, easy as that. Like, it's good for getting you passing lane steals. It's good for tipping the passes. I mean, it makes you more of a threat for people to not throw the ball right at your head. I'm not going to call this an S tier like it maybe has been in previous 2Ks. Passing lanes are still a little bit spotty in this game. So, like, we call it skill gap throws, right? It's kind of a corny term that we've now coined for literally just throwing the ball to me on a cut and just going for a dunk meter, because people have to press a button is what we also call it, where they literally have to make sure they tap their X, because it does still require some skill to play passing lanes in this game, for sure. And it can be really hard, and that's why I've kind of ditched it, to be honest with you guys. I've never really been a passing lane player for the most part, but the elite ones in this game can really take this badge and take it to the next level and be on some Pat Pete, you know, prime Darrell Revis type stuff, and they just can't be thrown the ball at. Like, they literally, you can't throw it their way, or else they will take that ball from you 100%. So Interceptor is very important. I promise you they would not be doing that either, for that matter, if they had like a 60 steal rating, or even lower than that, obviously. So to have Interceptor is very valuable. Not to mention, I've seen people who come out here with 60 steal and they can still get they can get a little bit, you know, nasty with it, but I will still say I think like the level of Interceptor that I'm talking about is like the 90 steal, you know, 89 technically for gold, and then 95 for Hall of Fame. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about. Also, it's come to my attention, I forgot to put chasedown on this video. So in the last one, we had it as an A tier badge. We're moving it down to the B tier. I think this is like a somewhat respectable badge. If you have it on a super high level, it can be very noticeable. It's like about as B tier as you could ever get a B tier badge, to be honest with you. I think it's like good, but not significant, but definitely would still be putting my points on it if it were a badge tier system, regardless of if I was a lockdown or a back end or a center or anything like that. Chasedown is still a good badge to have. I definitely recommend it on at least silver. I think like levels like gold and Hall of Fame, when it comes to your block rating, can be somewhat noticeable, and I actually will say it's a little bit more noticeable, the levels of it, than Anchor is. I think Anchor can be pretty like bronze or nothing sort of feel to it, and like silver and gold can have a little bit of extra factor to it, but I think that's more just your block rating talking. And you know what, we'll just move Anchor to where we have it as well. So I actually have Anchor in the B tier as well. So this is more of like a top of the B tier though, just keep that in mind. And again, I'm trying to tell you guys, like, what I think of Anchor is, it's a little bit more of like, if you have it on bronze versus nothing, that's very significant in terms of the difference. But at the same time, that's just more for shot blocking, to be honest with you. Defending the interior in this game is a lot about positioning and your height and wingspan. I've seen it firsthand getting contests on my like 6'10s that have, you know, the classic 30 or 40 interior defense with like 27 block or 35 block, whatever the heck it is. That's the minimum that I can get with the vertical requirements that I need. It's just, I don't think contesting shots on the interior is hard to do in this game at all. So when it comes to the standing lays and stuff like that, and even the standing dunks as well, I'm telling you guys, if you have good positioning on the stuff and you're like the right height and wingspan and stuff, you really don't get put in the dunks hardly at all. I mean, again, the standing dunk meter is a lot about positioning, so much to the point where a small point guard can make the same impact as a 7'3" center could, to me, honestly. And I would even argue they might even make more of an impact because of the speed and ability to cut me off and stuff. Whereas the 7'3s and 7'2s, 7'1s, they're too slow on their feet. You can kind of just get to your spot a lot easier on them and get them into the dead zone, honestly. So anyway, Anchor, it's like a good enough badge. I don't want to gas it up and put it in the A tier at all, though. I don't think it's that necessary, and I think you can actually get away with playing without it in some cases. But for back ends and center builds and stuff like that, definitely still recommend it on bronze with that 78 threshold for that silver chasedown and bronze Anchor. Simple as that. And then chasedown, again, like I said, it's a lot more noticeable at the high levels, but I think like it's not something you couldn't live without, if you get what I'm saying. Alright, next up we have 3 badges being revealed, being Boxout Beast and Rebound Chaser, grouped in as the rebounding badges, and then we have Challenger as well. So we'll start with the rebounding ones. We have Boxout Beast. This is obviously going to be for, you know, getting worms, getting box outs on people. I think it's a significantly important badge. I think people may underestimate its power as well. I've been unfortunately condemned to the life of only being able to get it on gold on a lot of the 6'10s I've created, because I still want to be able to keep that speed, and it's kind of something I have to do just to be able to get that 82 perimeter defense on the build. I could go lower on the prim D and just like, you know, go heavier on the weight and stuff like that, but I do value the speed and prim D that I get on those 6'10s that I create. I want to be able to guard the perimeter on them, and you definitely will need to have that 82 prim to even do that. So that's just a little side tangent, but long story short, I'm saying I've had gold. I feel really good about it, and sometimes, but I don't get the worm animations that I used to on the 7-footer that I had with 90 strength and Hall of Fame Boxout Beast. So I will say, someone that has extreme strength and Hall of Fame Boxout Beast can be quite the threat in terms of worm animations, but to sacrifice that level of strength, like to get that level of strength, you have to sacrifice a lot of speed, and that can cost you in some cases for rebounds as well, and like speed and vert both included in that. So anyway, long story short, the badge itself is extremely good. If I could get off Boxout Beast on a 6'10 with 75 speed, that'd be great, but obviously, you know, like I said, I'm stuck with the gold, but that's still elite. And then obviously Hall of Fame for the people who have it, that's super elite too. Gets them the box outs really well, secures those positioning spots, and then obviously goes for the worms really good too. So I might even argue that Boxout Beast in a way sometimes could be better than Rebound Chaser, but that's probably pushing it. Rebound Chaser is you know, definitely the better badge between the two of them. You just kind of have to have it to rebound the ball well. You know, it's about as simple as that. I actually would argue that it does carry a lot of weight. Like, for instance, if you go with, like, let's say a build with 93 offensive rebound but 78 defensive rebound, it'll still carry pretty hard. Like, you'll notice the difference between a 78 rebound build that gets bronze rebound chaser and then a 78 defensive rebound build but has 93 O board for the Hoff boxout beast and the gold rebound chasers. You'll notice the difference between the badge level, showing what those ratings can do, even though the ratings are the same. So I will say you definitely still want to have a good rating if you want to be elite at it. Like, I've started to double down on it. My newest 610 has 92 offensive rebound with 90 defensive rebound. So I am not such a sole believer in the fact that rebound chaser will carry on its own, but I definitely still believe in the power of the badge 100%. So anyway, moving along to our next one, the second to last we have on the list, we have Challenger. Now, I was thinking about putting this badge to B tier. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I've seen what the badge does, you know, like as far as guarding the most elite shooters in the game. Like, I've seen Hoff Challenger guarding the most elite point guard shooters in the game, but the dudes still green 60s, they still green 70s. Now, does that mean they're a good shooter or that they're cheating? I don't know. Obviously, I would argue probably more that they're good, but it's possible, you know. But anyway, regardless of that side tangent and, you know, that little additional point we have right there, Challenger is still extremely important for those corner spot up defenders. So let's say like your center, essentially, right? I know for a fact footers, they don't get bronze Challenger, you know, they just don't get that low of weight to even be reasonable to do that in the first place. 6'11s can get it though, and 6'10s can get it on silver in some specific cases like mine, where I have a little bit lower on the weight. But that's a significant difference versus not having it. I mean, if you don't have Challenger, you might be a liability in this game, honestly. I've seen so many people come out here with footers nowadays, and they cannot contest the perimeter hardly at all, bro. It feels like a true liability. I mean, they have to drop the rebound when a shot goes up. They might drop a little bit early. Boom, they get down in the corner. They try and recover. Nope, it's an open. It's a wide open. Something like that. I mean, they really have to rely on jump contest, and that's not a safe thing if you're talking rec, pro-am, anything like that. So to have extremely low perimeter defense and no Challenger is very detrimental to you in this game, especially where it's flooded with stretch bigs everywhere. And then you combine the fact that it's also really good for the lockdowns as well, even though obviously, you know, people green 70s sometimes, they green 60s sometimes, they may even green consistently 20s and 30s. But the thing is that you're still getting those contests. You know, that's all you can ask for at the end of the day. Because if you didn't have Challenger, if you didn't have Prim D, it would probably be an open. It would probably be, you know, what you got as a 40 with 94 Prim D. It would probably be more like a 8, to be honest, if you didn't have Challenger at all. So I still believe in the power of the badge. It's probably the bottom B tier, honestly. We also have Brick Wall as a B tier badge too. So just to clarify, I think everything here is better than Challenger in the A tier. Interceptor, Boxout Beast, Rebound Chaser, Brick Wall, I think they're all better than Challenger. I don't think Challenger belongs on the level of things like Chasedown and Fast Feet and Anchor and Clamps. I don't believe that. So it belongs on the A tier level more than it does the B. So we have Challenger as the worst A tier badge in the list, and then we have, I would say, the best A tier badge, probably Rebound Chaser. Brick Wall fits in as like the number 2 probably, Interceptor as the 3, Boxout Beast the 4, Challenger as the 5. So anyway, to come back to that Brick Wall tangent that we have right there, this is still a dominant badge, 100%. If you see it at the Hall of Fame level, it's unbelievable. It actually is ridiculous, but it's kind of a counteraction to that, right? Because if people come out there with a build that can get Hoff Brick Wall, they're pretty freaking slow. So when you do big body somebody, the back end can usually just step, and then you're all good, like the pick and roll defender, right? But in the rec, sometimes that quote-unquote back end happens to be sitting all the way back in the paint because bro just thinks he can get away with running a 2-3 against a pick and roll. Now, in the rec, you also might not get the uniform offense enough to run a pick and roll because there may just be people spamming cuts all over the place and, you know, just moving around willy-nilly. But I will say, obviously, if you look at the competitive pro-am levels, most people have gold on their centers. I have silver. It's not exactly great on silver, but it can still get the job done. Gold is dominant. Hall of Fame is elite. I mean, it's actually insane. But again, you know, it's in certain situations because you don't want to be so slow on the pick and roll. You know, there's 2 words to pick and roll, and pick happens to be one of them, right? And that's the brick wall. But roll is kind of the big factor that you have to do after it. And if you sacrifice too much strength to be able to get brick wall on a high level and it hurts your speed, boom, now you're kind of in pain after the whole set in the brick wall screen sort of deal. But anyway, it's still a dominant badge at multiple different levels, and it's necessary to have if you're setting screens. Simple as that. So lastly, we have the immovable and glove. Glove, obviously, it's not quite as OD as it used to be at the beginning of the year. I'll say that much, but it is still extremely dominant. Like, and what I've noticed too, and I want you guys to start paying attention to this a little bit, because my boy AK, Shots Top 5, he was putting me on to the fact that he gets hit with pluck momentum a lot, is what he called it. And that when lockdowns would pluck him once, they would continue to just avalanche. Like the momentum of it would just avalanche further and further. Boom goes the next pluck, the next pluck, the next pluck. And it just keeps on constantly going because it just happened one time. I want you guys to monitor that yourselves and remember that I told you that. And remember that he told me that, because when I first heard that, I was not a believer at all. But then I came out here with the 610 point center, right? And I would go full games with not getting plucked. I would go literally full games and consistently doing it too, getting like 1 turnover per game, maybe even 0 sometimes. But then when I would get plucked for the first time in that game, I had to be on alert for it 24/7 for the rest of the game, or at least for like at least what felt like the next 3 minutes or so, because you better believe I was getting hit with that pluck momentum, and I'm telling you, it's a real thing. I've experienced it firsthand. I was a skeptic. I didn't believe in that stupid BS of thinking that there was such a thing as actual momentum in the game. There definitely is after further review. So anyway, glove, it's pretty good, but it's even more crazy when you start avalanching it. And I've started to tell my team from this point forward too, that when I see 1 pluck, I'm saying spam steals from this point forward, because it's ridiculous how much it really is like an avalanche effect to it. But anyway, we'll get off that tangent a little bit. So lastly, we have immovable. Obviously, it's good for, you know, body up bumps. It's just a complete stonewall badge. It's probably the second best one in the game, though. I will still give the nod to glove as the best, but immovable, it really does move some mountains as far as like you being an elite defensive player. Having this on Hall of Fame as a lockdown is almost necessary in my opinion nowadays. I think gold at the very least is the pure necessity. And then if you have silver, I don't know, you better be crazy fast, because I don't think that's like, it's not fair enough as a lockdown for you to only have silver, if we're being honest. But anyway, obviously, you know, you get the Hall of Fame at 95, you get the gold at 90, you get the I think you get silver at 83, I believe. It might be 82. I don't know for a fact which of the two it is, but it's definitely one of them. But anyway, and then I believe for bronze it's like 71, 72, something like that. But all levels of this are extremely important to have, in my opinion. Like, no matter what you can afford, try and get it, because it's one of the best on-ball defensive badges in the game. And not to mention too, if you're a rotator or a back end or anything like that, when someone throws the ball to the center, it can be your saving grace and what really is the only remedy to this, where if the center catches it, but you get like an immovable like stonewall animation on him, sometimes he'll just lose the ball as he catches it and he'll just go flying into the baseline off him. And then other times too, he'll catch it, try and move into the dunk meter, like dead zone a little bit, and you happen to wall up with your hands up, and boom, just goes that immovable enforcer animation again. And now he lost the ball again, maybe to the baseline, or he got at least a forced pickup, and maybe he's feet stuck in the paint, about to get an offensive 3-second, throws a scary to the corner, boom, there's a lane. Or doesn't throw the ball at all, gets an offensive 3. Or doesn't throw the ball at all, has to call a timeout. And then you have to set up on the side out again. I mean, long story short, immovable is good to have all over the court. It's good to have at the point guard, well, to defend the point guards, to defend the 2 guards, to defend the centers on the back end, to defend as a dropper where you're rotating out the corner. You know, like I would argue only one position doesn't need it on the court, and that's the point guard. And that's likely guarding the small forwards and stuff like that, aka the locks. But anyway, that is all for video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, tell them noties, all good stuff. And like always, try to 1,000 likes. Made to the end of the video, put your favorite badge in the comments, short parts my way through. Or if you don't really care to think that hard on it, you could just put the word badge in the comments, search parts mail through the end of this video. So feel free to leave some feedback though. Let me know if you guys appreciate the fact that we're doing this at, you know, 100 days after the second one. It's been a long time, but I just feel like the necessity of these videos has faded a tad bit because of that lack of badge point system. That was one thing that really brought the value to these videos, and it's not quite there anymore, but I still do like giving my opinion on these and letting you guys know as far as like what I think is important to go for in terms of creating your builds. So at least we can do that. Plus it's fun to just debate these as well, you know, on some like barbershop talk, you know, talk about who's the GOAT. Well, in my opinion, the GOAT is these two. So feel free to give me yours. So anyway, that's all for the video. Hope you all enjoyed. And on that, catch the other videos. Take it easy, man. Peace.